All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our JAMP Alumnus Q&A. We are so grateful to have you here today. We definitely are very excited to share some information with you about our program and of course get some wonderful Q&A from our JAMP alumnus who has graciously decided to join us today. Our host for tonight, well, there's myself. My name is Joel. I'm the director of the program. And then we actually have Dr. Tommy Tran, who has graciously agreed to join us from the JAMP class of 2010. Dr. Tran, if you'll say a few words.
Hey, how are you guys? I'll introduce myself more when I get started. But I was born in Vietnam, grew up in Houston, Texas, went to UT Austin, went to Baylor College of Medicine afterwards, and I'm currently a fourth-year general surgery resident at University of Arizona in Tucson right now.
Great, thanks, Dr. Tran. I'm very glad you could join us today. So for today's format, we're just going to go very briefly over what the JAMP mission is, who the JAMP program is for, some of the benefits of the program. We'll talk very, very briefly about some pathways into JAMP, and then we'll jump right into kind of the JAMP alumnus Q&A session, which is really the main emphasis for today. We'll also talk about some few of the resources, but of course, feel free to utilize the chat at any time to ask any questions that you may have. So just very briefly, who is JAMP for? Well, JAMP's mission is really to provide for students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds from across the state of Texas the ability to successfully matriculate into medical school and pursue a career in medicine. That is the entire reason the program exists, is to help students get to, well, to become a physician. And we do that by providing a number of different benefits within the program, such as MCAT preparation, summer internship, as well as clinical enrichment experiences, and of course, some financial assistance in the forms of, well, summer stipends, as well as even some scholarships in medical school. We, of course, offer a guaranteed admission to participate in Texas medical school if all criteria are met, one of the biggest benefits of the program. You can see some of the medical schools that participate within our program, but keep in mind this list is not exhaustive. The entire list of participating medical schools that are on our website via texasjamp.org. There are some different pathways into JAMP if you're thinking that some of these benefits that I mentioned are of interest to you. And we definitely encourage you to visit our website to learn a little bit more about those. If you visit our website, click on either prospective students or how to apply, you're going to get the full listing of what the program is actually about, as well as some of the criteria for joining our program. Ultimately, know this: if you are thinking about becoming a physician here in the state of Texas, JAMP can help provide that pathway to you. So, as I mentioned, my section is very, very brief. It's really mostly about Dr. Tran here today. So Dr. Tran, I know you wanted to share your screen during this time. If you'll kick it off from here.
Oh, yeah, let me unmute myself. Share screen. Perfect. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Looking good,
Perfect.
Dr. Tran.
All right, well, welcome to JAMP. I think JAMP is, you can see your application. Oh, okay. Welcome to JAMP. I think JAMP is a wonderful program, and it has been an integral part of my professional and personal life for the past 10 years. It all started back in 2000, I would say 2011, when I got this letter from Paul Hermesmeyer when I got accepted into JAMP. I applied my second year, at the beginning of my second year, and I always knew that I wanted to enter the health profession. I didn't know whether or not I wanted to be a dentist or a PT, veterinary medicine, or a doctor. But as I progressed through high school and college, I saw myself leaning more and more towards medicine, from shadowing, from volunteer work. And I saw JAMP as a real opportunity to open these doors to be able to shadow physicians in not only the clinic, but in the operating room as well. And the acceptance into medical school was really the cherry on top. So this is going to be my personal experience with JAMP. I know that since 2010, it's changed a lot, but I hope that this gives you a glimpse into JAMP and what it can provide for you as a program as a whole. So this was the track that I did. I don't think the early admissions track was available at the time. I applied right here at the beginning of my, I applied right here at the beginning of my second year, and I was accepted at the middle of my second year. And my first summer internship was at Baylor. So this is me. I think I was 19 or 20 years old. Very eager to learn. My JAMP Summer 1 session was filled with MCAT classes, anatomy and physiology, and I got to shadow a neurosurgeon in not only in the clinic, but in the operating room as well. And that was actually my first time in the OR. I got to learn how to scrub. I got to learn how to see the flow of the operating room. And that's really when I fell in love with the OR and decided to pursue surgery. Of course, learning all the time, you need to balance that out. So we also had a lot of fun, and fun we had. These friends that I met along the way were some of my best friends. And I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but some of these people are prominent physicians now as well. This is Dr. Green. He was a JAMP alumnus as well, and he's now a psychiatrist. He actually did a panel similar to what I did. This is Dr. Wing. She is now an ER doctor. This is Dr. Oh shoot, I forgot his last name. But he is now a second lieutenant in the Navy. And all of these are now my dearest friends in medicine and in my personal life. So my summer 2 was at UT Houston. This was between my junior and my senior year. So we kind of did some of the same things. We learned more complex anatomy and physiology. We did more intensive MCAT prep, and started to have more applications preparations. Some of these people, as you can see, are the same people that went to Baylor with me during my summer 1 internship. And some of these people are those from the direct admissions program down in the South, down in Brownsville, and they rotated with us as well. And so that was really cool. So I loved JAMP so much that I decided to become a mentor when after I left and became a med student. So at the end of my second year of medical school, I came back. And so these are my medical students. And as you can see, Bryant, Nito, now I remember his name, he also came back as a mentor with me. And as you can see, Dr. Trung here, he's now a neurology resident, and he's actually like a little brother to me. This is, he is now at Mayo as an EM physician. She is now in psychiatry. She is at Baylor as an anesthesiologist. And so all of these people, when I met them, they were just like me in 2010, very eager to learn, and years later are now physicians in their own right, which is an amazing progress to see. And so I can really tell you personally and professionally, JAMP has changed my life. So what do I do now? So I'm a fourth-year general surgery resident. Lots of surgery, lots of blood, lots of bowel, arteries, lots of amputations. This is a abdominal aortic aneurysm repair. This is a colon resection. This is another colon resection here. This is a gallbladder surgery. This was a transplant. This is a gallbladder surgery, and then this was a liver transplant here. And so as I progressed through residency, I'm still looking back at JAMP, and I still want to contribute to the program because I know how important it is to get the future generations of physicians, not just physicians, but physicians from economically disadvantaged regions, because that was where I came from, and that was where I wish to practice after I finish residency and fellowship. And not only am I working, but I'm also having fun in residency, you know, eating, drinking, and saving lives of little baby mannequins. And not only in the hospital, but out in the world as well, because you have to have work-life balance. And so this is my wife, and we travel, you know, this is San Diego. This is the Smoky Mountains. This is Glacier. And it's a beautiful thing to have a work-life balance, even within general surgery residency. And now I have a 6-week-old, so my family is growing, not only in the sense that I have blood relatives, but also in the sense that I have a JAMP family as well, because in a few weeks, I will be going to her wedding. Oops, where'd it go? I will be going to her wedding. I went to his wedding already, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that he's going to get married next year, and so I will be going to his wedding. So really, JAMP has been an integral part of my life. So thank you so much, and that's all I have for JAMP, and that has been my experience with JAMP. If you have any questions for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go ahead and stop your sharing here. So everyone, this is kind of your opportunity now to ask Dr. Tran questions. I'll read those in the chat, of course, and then we'll be able to provide answers as best as we can. Anyways, so Dr. Tran, it looks like first question here is, how much does med school cost on average? So if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, so it depends on whether or not you are 1, in-state, 2, out-of-state, and 3, if you have any financial assistance. I went to Baylor, and Baylor's tuition, okay, well, actually, let me back up. In order to determine the true value, the true cost of medical school, you must first think of not only tuition, but also cost of living. the cost of a car, the cost of food in all those 4 years. So for me, I went to Baylor, whose tuition was $12,000 a year. I had to rent an apartment whose cost was about $1,200 a month. I had to buy a car that was, I think, $20,000. And then food expenses averaged about $600 a month, and utilities as well. So by the end of everything, I think I ended up owing roughly about $150,000, $200,000 when I subtracted all of my financial aid with my scholarships.
All right. So let's see here. Next question. What do you think JAMP looks for most in an applicant? So I can answer this kind of from the perspective of JAMP, in that we certainly take a look at the whole application itself. So your experiences, of course, your exposure to medicine, your grades, certainly any scholarships that you actually have in terms of research, stuff like that. So it really is quite a bit of everything. The best advice I could probably give you for any student who's interested in JAMP is prepare for JAMP like you're preparing for medical school. And that means, yeah, all that's involved in there. Dr. Tran, do you have any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, so as an applicant to JAMP, as a JAMP interviewer, as a med school interviewer, as a residency interviewer, what we're looking for is a person with a mission statement or a goal. So what I mean by that is, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Like, why do you want to go to medical school? And why do you want to be a physician? I think a lot of people have a really good applications, and they volunteer a lot, and they have really good grades. But I think what separates the good applicants from the great applicants is their ability to answer that question. Like, why do you want to be a physician? Like, what is your drive? Like, at the end of the day, when you're tired, but you still have to do this, this, and that, and take care of that patient, like, why do you do it? What's your internal drive? And if you're able to voice that, and if they're able to understand that, I think you're a lot more likely, you're more likely to get accepted. What do you think, Dr. Robles?
Yeah, certainly you might hear this quite a bit. It's a holistic admissions review process, you know, but really being able to articulate why you want to become a physician beyond just helping people is certainly a boon, I would say, actually, because there is a section on the JAMP application that asks you, why medicine, actually, and really putting forth the effort, of course, with your JAMP faculty director towards answering that question, I think will really help you understand, well, why JAMP, actually. So I think the next question we've sort of addressed, which is, what do you think can make a student stand out, as in like GPA extra activities during application? If you feel like perhaps we haven't answered that, please just re-ask the question. We can kind of go back to that one. But here's one for you, Dr. Tran. Do med schools require you to live on campus, or can you live at home?
You can live really anywhere you want, as long as you're able to satisfy the requirements of medical school. What I mean by that is classes, lectures themselves are recorded, and so you can watch them at any time. However, there are specific courses that require you to be in person, like anatomy, specific afternoon lectures that teach you how to do a physical exam, small group sessions. These require attendance. So if you want to live 30 minutes away from the medical school and only come in for those sessions, that's totally okay. But otherwise, you can live anywhere you want. I think that was the consensus for me and for all of my medical school friends.
Is there anything we can do to prepare well for the application process? What advice would you give to a future applicant? I could answer this very briefly as far as what you can do to prepare for the application process, and then perhaps Dr. Tran, you might have some advice to give to a future applicant. So structurally, I will say this, having a file with all of your documents, and I mean transcripts, letters of recommendation, a CV, where you list out pretty much everything that you've done in terms of volunteering, shadowing, interning. Having one single document with all that information will help make your application go so much smoother, in addition to meeting with your JAMP faculty director for knowing how to review everything. And finally, of course, reviewing the application handbook would help you really prepare well for the application process.
Yeah, so preparing your application means to try to improve every aspect of your application. So you want to take a look at numbers. So if you can improve your numbers, improve your numbers. If you can't, then see how you can improve your letters. So start early. Ask the people that you're going to ask for letters to say, hey, I'm going to ask you for a letter of recommendation towards the end of the semester. And then get to know them on a personal level. You know, like I knew that I was going to ask Dr. Lottie, who was the JFD at UT Austin, for a letter of recommendation like 4 months later. So I got to know the professor, and I went to his office hours, and it developed into a relationship. And so when I received his letter, although I'd never read it, I knew that it would be a strong letter because he knew who I was. It wasn't going to be a letter that just said, oh, Tommy was a student in my class. He graduated from Aldine High School. He got this GPA. He went and did this extracurricular activity. It would be, he was in my chemistry class. He always went to office hours, and he performed very well. He was thoughtful, et cetera, et cetera. And so these very personalized letters mean a lot more than the standardized letters that you will receive. And I think that is something that can be improved on in your application. So prepare early and always try to see if you can get to know your letter writers beforehand. I think is the best advice I can give you.
Great advice, 100%. Can you talk about your experience matriculating into the medical school? Was it, I guess, what's the match process like, or how did that work out for you rather? And then do JAMP students end up matriculating into the medical schools they interned at? I will answer that last one, no. But I will leave the rest to you, Dr. Tran.
Yeah, so I really wanted to go to Baylor, and during the match process, during my interviews, I'll explain the match process during my time, and I think it may be a little different now. But we interviewed at all 9 medical schools whenever I was interviewing, and then we would rank the programs 1 to 9. And during the interview, they would ask us, okay, well, why do you want to go here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did my research, and I made it known that whenever you apply to medical school, you always want to create a narrative of not only what can the medical school do for you, but what you can do for the medical school. And so I did that not only with the medical school that I wanted to go to, but all of the medical schools as well, because you want to work hard and you want to make sure that all the medical schools want you. And so I eventually matched to Baylor because my family was in Houston and I really wanted to stay around. Matriculating into medical school was a huge change. When someone tells you that you're drinking out of a fire hydrant, they're not wrong. I would say it's the same difficulty, but the amount of information that you learn in a week in medical school is equivalent to a semester of college. It's a lot of information and you're memorizing it, and then you're going home late and you get exhausted. But it's a grind in medical school is what I would equate the transition to be. But I mean, I loved it, and would I do it again? I would do it again.
Great, thank you so much. One clarifying thing on my comments anyways, when I said no, it's not automatic, I guess is what I was trying to say, actually. So like Dr. Tran, who matched to Baylor, just because a student does a summer internship at a specific medical school does not mean that they automatically match to that medical school. So let me just make that little bit of nuance clear in my description. Is there an advantage to applying for the early admission versus regular admission? I'll just tackle that one. No, it's the same criteria, it's the same process. Really, the early admission pathway exists because you might be in a situation where you did a lot of college work while you were a senior in high school. And if you already have the college work, then that early admission pathway exists to do that versus making you wait a year after graduation from high school. It looks like, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I did some AP work and dual credit work, but at the time, the early admissions pathway was not available to us.
Yeah, it's within the past couple of years that we existed. Next question, how is the matching process, and do you think your history at a school's internship influenced your attendance in deciding / matching a medical school? And then, oh, wow, I was thinking the same. Okay, so I think we actually may have answered that one there, Dr. Tran. So I think we'll go ahead and move forward here. What defines a disadvantaged student in relation to the program? Is it only based on EOC and scholarships? I'll answer this question. JAMP utilizes the expected family contribution based on your free application for federal student aid. JAMP uses a value of 8,000 or below based on your EFC in order to determine the economic disadvantage for the program itself. Does JAMP only consider things done in college when it comes to volunteer work, extracurriculars, etc.? There is a section in our application that talks about high school stuff as well. So it's not just your college work, it is also some of your high school stuff as well. How much shadowing is enough for JAMP? And how did you get shadowing experience? Dr. Tran.
So when I was in high school, I volunteered at my local hospital. I think I volunteered only in the summers and only about 3 hours a week for 2 summers. I didn't get any opportunities to shadow. It was only during JAMP that I got the opportunity to shadow any physicians. But I did have a background in hospital volunteering. So I would say you don't need any experiences with shadowing, but what you do need is evidence and continued evidence that you are committed to medicine as a field itself. So whether or not it's work in a hospital or it's work with some sort of nonprofit, et cetera, you need to be able to link that into why did you want to do medicine. And it goes back to my narrative, or when I talked about a narrative, is you have to build your narrative. Like, okay, I want to go into medical school. Why did I pick this? Why did I pick this extracurricular activity? And how does that fit into my narrative of wanting to go into medical school?
Great stuff. Yeah, but for JAMP, there's not a specific number of hours that's required as part of the application. Just more kind of a structural thing there. But as Dr. Tran mentioned, do you have a good understanding of why you want to become a physician? And do you have that exposure to healthcare? That is probably more important.
Because I'll actually mention this. Having an MD does not 100% guarantee that you will go into clinical medicine. An MD is a degree that states that you finished medical school. There are physicians that finish MDs and then go on to work in consulting, or they work with drug companies, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also physicians who become lawyers, MD, JDs. So having an MD doesn't mean that that person wants to be a clinical doctor. So I'll harp on this one last time. It's your narrative. Like, why do you want to be a physician? And as long as it makes sense about why you're doing what you're doing, your interviewer will see your narrative, because we don't want cookie cutter physicians, because we want someone who is able to make their own pathway. And me as an applicant myself right now, applying for fellowship, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build my narrative into saying, okay, well, I want to go into critical care because of X, Y, and Z. And in 5 years, I want to do this, this, and that. And the things that I've done in the past is aligned with that because of A, B, and C. And so that's why it's so important. And that's why I'm always mentioning, what is your narrative and how does that fit into the whole story?
Great. Next question, what happens if I do not meet the minimum MCAT score after the first internship? Definitely that's more of an individualized situation. So if we do have a student in there, we provide them guidance for something like that. Are we expected to submit letters of recommendation and the application during the summer if we're applying during the regular admission process? Or will we have time during the first semester of sophomore year? So I will say this, the application itself for this upcoming year, anyways, or the one that we actually have open up here soon, will be due by September 30th, 2022. So while you can certainly submit it earlier if you like, just kind of keep that in mind that you do have a little bit of time to kind of get everything worked out, which would mean that, yeah, during your first semester of your sophomore year, you do have a little bit of time, just certainly not all the time. So just kind of keep that in mind. Certainly use the summer to prepare for the application, but it is not expected to turn it in earlier unless it's ready, of course. This one is a question for you. Dr. Tran here is, how hard is the MCAT?
Oh, is my screen? Oh, there it goes. I thought my screen was frozen. The MCAT, I think it's a test that it's a standardized test. So with practice, you'll start to see patterns in the test. So the more practice tests or the more practice questions that you do, the better you'll be able to achieve. And I think that's all I'll be able to say. It's the same as the SAT. It's the same as the ACT. There's principles that build your foundation. And the more you practice upon it, the better you will get. So it's only hard if you are not prepared. But if you're like a basketball player that wakes up at 5:15 in the morning and shoots 1,000 shots before he goes to school, and then comes home and shoots another 1,000 shots, you will be able to do very well on the MCAT. That's all I'll say.
Next question. Do we have to stay a biology major, or can we be any major and just complete the courses required for the program?
You can be whatever major you want to be as long as you complete the courses.
That's pretty much it for JAMP. We do have a time requirement, of course. So you can't just change majors as you want to within the program and extend out your length of graduation itself. So that is definitely a no-no. But we don't have a specific major that's required for the program. You do have to complete all your medical school prerequisites. So one thing I will say here is that certain college majors will make it a little bit more difficult to complete out some of those courses depending on what you have. For example, a music major trying to complete out all the science prerequisites, those aren't necessarily things that they require for the degree, but would be required for matriculation in medical school. So a bit of a nuance there. How much scholarships, excuse me. Oh wait, apologies, I almost skipped over one. Is there any resources or tips you recommend to use when writing our essays and conducting our interviews, Dr. Tran?
Yeah, so when writing your essays, I would contact your writing center at your college or university. I know that UT Austin has a really good writing center that's free. 2, I would contact those that have gone before you. And 3, I would utilize resources like Grammarly, Grammarly.com. What that is it helps you with your sentence structures and your syntax structures. So it allows you to see, oh yeah, I need this comma here, or I need to change this passive sentence into an active sentence. And I would recommend you paste your essay into like a Google Doc and have Google read it to you so that you can hear that being read to you. And I think that's something that I utilize a lot, to hear that essay being read by someone else to me and to see if it makes sense, if it flows, and where the hiccups are. Have a lot of people read the essay, especially people that you trust, and ask them, does this essay illustrate who I am as a person? Like, if you were to read this essay, does this reflect me? And does this show, not tell, but show that I am passionate about medicine?
Great stuff. How much scholarships do we get from JAMP for each summer and for medical schools? So that can vary actually depending on the year. So I don't want to provide a specific amount and say this is what it will always be. But I will say this, the summer stipend that we provide to our students for this upcoming year is one that's determined by our JAMP Council, of course, and same thing with the medical school scholarships as well. Just encourage you that if you are part of a program, you just give us a holler. We can give you that exact amount at that time. But great question all the same. Dr. Tran, I did have a few questions for you actually. Did anyone actually tell you about JAMP?
Yeah, so I had a upperclassman who was in JAMP that told me about JAMP. And this was, I think, in the middle of my first year. And so that's when I started to look into it, to see if I qualified, specifically to look at my EOC, and to hatch out a game plan for applying it to JAMP. I started to start talking to my letter writers during my my spring semester of first year, and to get to really know them. I didn't tell them that I was going to ask them for a letter, but I knew that eventually I would. So I really got to know like Dr. Buskirk, Dr. Lottie, and Dr. Iverson of UT Austin. And so as fall semester of second year came along, I knew that I had my personal statement down. I knew that was when I was going to ask for my letters, and I started on my application. So everything kind of fell into place. And so I submitted my application at the beginning of my second year, interviews midway through the fall semester of second year, and then my acceptance early spring of my second year. So that was my timeline for JAMP.
Great, great. How does the interview process work at the medical schools?
So when you apply, so it's a little different between medical school and residencies. For medical schools, you apply to as many medical schools as you want, and they'll invite you for residencies. Whenever I was applying, it was all in-person interviews. So it's usually a day and a half. You would come the night before for a mixer. And that's when you would meet with current students. You would meet with some faculty if they were there. And you would learn about the medical school, what it's about, what its mission statement is. And then the next day, you would interview with a variety of people. You would interview with the dean, you would interview with faculty, you would interview with MS4s all the way down to MS1s. And then you would either go home or actually, yes, you would go home, sorry. You would go home and then you would wait for either an acceptance or a rejection. With residency, it's a little different. For medical schools, the medical school can either accept, reject, or waitlist you, and each medical school can do that separately. So you can get a bunch of acceptances, but for residency, you go through the match. So you can only get one match. But that is a discussion for another time, because that'll take hours to discuss. Yeah.
On that note, we're going to go into hour 3 of our, obviously, just kidding. Thank you. So going back to the analogy of the basketball player and knowing how medical school will be, must we adjust our learning and working habits before the JAMP internships, or will these internships help us in this manner?
I think it'll help you within the summer. So contrary to what you've heard, and contrary to all of my achievements, I am a huge procrastinator. The only reason why I was able to do all those things in a timely manner was because I wrote myself Post-it notes, and I wrote myself Post-it notes in the mirror. And so I would get annoyed that I couldn't see myself in the mirror if I didn't do a task. So that's how I got myself to do stuff. When I went to college, I had to change the way that I studied, because the jump from a little background, I'm the first person to go to high school in my family. So I immigrated to the US when I was 5 or 6, and I didn't know a lick of English. So that learning curve to learn English in elementary school all the way to high school was very steep for me. And then from high school to college was another steep learning curve. So I really had to adjust my learning style to think about, okay, well, how am I going to not only learn this information, but also retain this information? And so I utilized a lot of one, Anki, which is a repetition flashcard application. 2, I utilized recordings. So back in the day, I had a little recorder that I would record lectures and then listen back to them and then write my own notes again. And so I would fit each lecture into one page, and that would help me a lot. And then I would read all those notes the day before the test. And I think that really solidified the way that I studied. And then in medical school, I realized that that was not feasible because I was going into the bushes and trying to learn every single detail. Medical school presented another challenge because there was so much information for me to learn. And what I realized was that I needed to learn how to apply my knowledge instead of trying to memorize my knowledge. So it was more a question-based learning. So I did a lot of practice tests. I did a lot of question banks, and I utilized my friends to help me ask clinical scenarios about how things work. And then that would help trigger my memory of the lecture and etc. So these were things that I messed with to try to get me the best outcome in my own situation. It doesn't mean that it'll work for you. It's just things that worked for me. I mean, there are a lot of resources on YouTube, like the Panorama technique or Anki, etc. But you got to find your own way of testing it out. And I think testing it out in a summer program where your grades aren't going to be solidified onto your transcript is really nice. But I mean, start now, start in high school, see what works, see what doesn't work, and then go from there.
Great, thanks. Next question, and I think I'll be able to take this one. I have to take Chem 2 and Organic Chem 2 at a community college due to the fact I didn't take Chem 1 during my first semester. Would the JAMP board look down on that, or will it be okay for me to take some science classes outside of my school? So for this, I could answer this kind of two ways. The first way I'll answer this is that for the JAMP program anyways, our criteria is such as that you need to be enrolled at a participating institution, and then you need to have Gen Chem 1 and Gen Chem 2 completed with associated labs, as well as OChem 1 and OChem 2 completed with associated labs prior to the first summer internship. JAMP does not stipulate where you need to have those classes completed until you're actually admitted into the program, in which you must take them at your home institution. So that is the best way I can answer that. We have had students in the past attend community college before they enrolled at one of our participating institutions, and that's absolutely fine. So there really is no issue with that. I would encourage you, though, of course, to reach out to us here in the office if you need a little bit more guidance on that. Question for you, Dr. Tran. Do professors allow you to record their lectures in med school?
All lectures in medical schools are recorded, actually. And I listen to them at 1.5 speed. Anything less is too slow.
You know, I've actually heard that from a lot of JAMP, JAMP students who are now physicians, as well as those who are actually in medical school. They need it a little bit quicker. I believe you answered this, but how did you know that you wanted to be a doctor? I know you talked a little bit about the summer internship experience there, but even before then, you know, what kind of motivated you towards applying to JAMP?
Yeah, so I wanted a profession that allowed for critical thinking, allowed for collaboration, that allowed for the ability to work with people. And medicine really encompassed all of that. When I was in medical school, I really gravitated towards general surgery because it was the best of both worlds. General surgery, when you think about it on the outside, is a specialty where you operate on people. You bring them or where you see a patient with an operative problem, you fix them, and then they get better. But actually general surgery is a lot more than that. It's 50% medicine and 50% surgery, because the medicine aspect of it is the critical care. You're taking care of patients in the ICU, you're seeing them at their most ill, and then you're bringing them back to stability. And then you also have the operative arm of general surgery, where you fix people. You see them with an acute appendicitis or a gallbladder issue, or colon cancer, and you fix them. But there's also that other arm of general surgery where you cannot fix them. Metastatic colon cancer, where you can't fix them. You have palliative surgery. There's also the innovation of general surgery, which I thought was really cool. And so whenever I was in college, I saw general surgery, or I saw surgery as a field as a whole, and I said, wow, surgery is really cool. And all of the extracurricular activities that I was doing in high school really, really encompassed and really geared myself towards a field in general surgery, or surgery in general. I had a lot of twists and turns with which surgical subspecialty, but in the end, I really liked surgical critical care.
Thank you. Dr. Tran, I think we got time for maybe one more question here. How long is residency? And of course, if you're comfortable, how much do you get paid?
Yeah, so all of this information is actually public. If you want to search it up, it's actually really interesting. So residency is anywhere from 3 years to 7 years. So internal medicine is 3 years, family medicine is 3 years, neurology is 4 years, all the surgical subspecialties are 5 years. If you have some with research within them, there's 6 years, like plastics or neurosurgery, who has an integrated fellowship within it, is 7 years. And then within that, you also have the ability to do a subspecialty, which is called a fellowship. And that can range from 1 year to 3 years. So with medicine, you have 3 years of residency to become an internal medicine doctor, which is board certified. And then you have the ability to do like rheumatology, which is 2 years, or cardiology, which is 3 years, GI 3 years. And then you have the ability within internal medicine, cardiology, to do a subspecialty like electrophysiology or interventional radio or interventional cardiology, et cetera. So it's like you're pulling weeds. And so I've seen someone who did 14 years of residency and fellowship, which is crazy. So he did medicine pediatrics. He did pediatric and adult cardiology. He did congenital cardiology, and then he did electrophysiology. So 14 years of training, which is crazy. How much do we get paid? We get paid anywhere from $60,000 to about $79,000 with a PGY 7 year. So right now I get paid like $70,000. And like, again, all of this information is public. So you can just search up like resident salary.
All right. Well, Dr. Tran, thank you so much. Forgive that we weren't able to get to all the questions, but we do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. I hope you found everyone this information session useful, this Q&A, of course, with Dr. Tran. Dr. Tran, obviously, thank you so much for participating in this. We certainly absolutely appreciate all of the time and questions that you were able to answer today. Do you have any final words of wisdom? And I see you already put your email address there, so.
Yeah, of course. I think medicine is a beautiful field. It really allows you to take care of patients that sometimes have nowhere else to turn to. I love it. I've been in, I've started this journey almost 10, 11 years ago. And I have another 2.5 years of training left before I'm an attending. You will always have an imposter syndrome, meaning that you will always feel that you don't know enough. But what we'll realize when you look back is that you've gained so much knowledge and so much experience. When I got accepted into JAMP, the person that emailed me first was Enrique. And I don't know if you guys know, but Enrique is working for TMD SAS, and he used to be part of JAMP. And Dr. Robles took over the position of Paul Hermesmeyer, who used to be my JAMP coordinator. So I think that's actually pretty cool that he finally retired. So I mean, we're all family here, and if you guys have any questions or any concerns, like totally hit me up, and I'll try to guide you in the right direction. But I mean, good luck. And I hope to see you part of the JAMP family in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your night. Feel free to give us a call or email us at any time. And thank you again. Have a good one.
Bye.